Rachel's scream got stuck in her throat. The empty space where the car had been felt surreal. Mark dashed to the spot, circling like the vehicle might magically reappear. Sarah gripped Kyle's arm, whispering that they were trapped. Rachel's chest tightened. The square around them suddenly felt colder and darker. Mark snapped that maybe someone towed it, but even he didn't sound convinced. Rachel pointed to the church, its crooked steeple silhouetted against the sky, every window glowing with a steady orange light. She whispered, "Maybe someone's inside. Maybe they can help." Mark clenched his jaw but nodded, and the four of them moved together across the square, their footsteps echoing loudly on the cracked pavement. The church door stood half open, swaying slightly as if inviting them in. Rachel hesitated, swearing she heard faint voices inside, chanting low and steady. Mark pushed the door and the hinges groaned, releasing a musty smell of dust and mildew. Candles lined the walls, their flames burning low but steady, as if untouched by air. Pews stretched forward, all empty, yet Rachel felt eyes crawling across her skin. At the far end, an altar stood with a man in dark robes bowing his head, whispering words in a language they couldn't understand. He lifted his head slowly, revealing pale eyes and sagging grey skin, a smile too wide spreading across his lips. "Welcome back, children," he said, his voice cracking like dry wood. Sarah grabbed Rachel's hand, whispering they should leave, but the priest stretched his arms wide. "You've returned after so long. The town has been waiting." Rachel stammered, "We're not from here," but the man only laughed, a hollow sound echoing off the stone walls. Mark tugged her arm, trying to pull her toward the exit, but when they turned, the church doors slammed shut. The candles blazed brighter, shadows stretching up the walls. The priest's voice deepened, "You cannot leave Hollow Creek. Not now, not ever." Kyle shouted to open the doors, slamming his fists against the wood, but it wouldn't budge. Rachel's heart raced as she turned back, and the pews were no longer empty. Figures sat hunched in every row, heads bowed, faces hidden, their clothes ragged with age. The priest lifted his arms, and the congregation began to hum, a low, guttural sound vibrating in Rachel's bones. Sarah sobbed, whispering, "This isn't real." Mark pulled at the doors again, straining with all his weight, when suddenly the humming stopped. Silence crashed over the room, and every figure turned their heads at once, pale eyes opening and staring directly at the four intruders. Rachel's breath hitched as the priest whispered, "Sit with us and be remembered." Mark roared, shoving the doors until they burst open. The four stumbled out into the square, gasping. The night air felt heavier, thicker, like smoke, yet there was no fire behind them. The church windows glowed brighter, shapes pressing against the glass. "Watching," Mark shouted. "We need to find another way out." They ran across the square toward the boarded-up general store. The boards creaked as Mark yanked them loose, the door groaning open. Inside, the smell of rot hit them. Shelves coated in dust held jars of food long spoiled. Kyle gagged, covering his nose. Rachel's flashlight beam shook across the aisles, catching glimpses of movement too fast to see clearly. Sarah whispered, "They're following us." Rachel spun, but the aisles were empty, the light trembling in her hand. Then something slammed above them, dust showering down, footsteps dragging across the ceiling. Mark growled, "We're not staying." He shoved them all back out into the square, but the moment they emerged, Rachel froze. The diner, the church, the store, every door was wide open, and from each building pale townsfolk stepped out. Their eyes were lifeless, clothes torn, movements stiff, faces wrong. The square filled slowly, silently, with figures closing in on every side. Rachel's voice cracked, "We can't stay here." Mark grabbed her hand, and they ran toward an alley between two houses, shadows thick, buildings leaning close, the air colder than ice. They stumbled through garbage cans and broken crates, Rachel's breath burning in her chest. Sarah cried out behind them. Something cold brushed her shoulder. Rachel spun, catching a glimpse of a pale hand vanishing into the dark. They burst onto another street lined with sagging houses, every window glowing, every curtain twitching, figures waiting just behind the glass. Rachel whispered, "There's no end to this place, no end at all." Mark's face was pale, voice hoarse but firm. "We keep moving, we'll find a way." Rachel forced her legs forward, but her eyes never stopped scanning the windows. Each shadow seemed closer, each face pressed harder against the glass. The town itself was watching them, waiting for them,